So I had a comment recently on a video called "Is Manifestation Gaslighting God?" And this is a very vulnerable comment. And honestly, it's something where this is what I want this channel to become, is when people leave a comment like this, I do my best to try to help them. And this comes from Nabila from Sweden. Hey, thank you for sharing your heart. I just came home from the gym, body tired, mind louder than ever. I sat on the couch, turned on Netflix, but something deeper pulled me to YouTube. Maybe it was my soul whispering, seek, because I'm hurting. Something inside me cracked yesterday, a quiet kind of breakdown. All those ideas, manifestation, energy, vibration, they suddenly felt like illusions, just another way to control the masses, but in a new age disguise. I find myself distancing more and more from people, ending up alone with my thoughts. I used to feel like I understood life, saw beauty in everything, even pain. Now even beauty feels far away. I've read the books you mentioned. I've listened, I've searched for years and years, but like you, something feels off. And now my fire has dimmed. I've lost the will to create, to write, to share the light I once felt burning in me. I watch society from a distance, present, yet not part of it. I feel lonely. I feel angry at life, at God, ? I don't even know anymore, but I want to believe. Please help me believe again. Love, Nabila from Sweden. Well, Nabila, I deeply appreciate your vulnerable and honest and heartfelt message. And this got me thinking all throughout my day. And I wanted to make a video dedicated just to this comment. And I mean, I think the way I would start is, I think by the end of this, there's going to be 2 books that I recommend reading, or maybe 3. But from my point of view, where I've been that might be similar and might provide me with some means of maybe connecting with your situation and helping, would be that, you know, I've been in a weird place where I've felt that feeling where your fire dims, or something seems really off, or you feel like you're on the edge of this precipice where there's something really, really, I guess the way I would put it, maybe evil or something. It just doesn't feel good. And I mean, I felt that intensely ever since a great friend and mentor of mine passed away in, I'd say it was 2023. And this shook up my world. It felt like my reality got torn in half or torn up, and I couldn't put the pieces together. I couldn't figure out what this meant. But at the time, I wasn't in a good place spiritually, and it took me through a journey of trying to make sense of things, and finding the books that we talked about in the video, is, Manifestation Gaslighting God. And I went down this road of spirituality. Now, for a while, it did help, but through the process of it, I did get to a place where I felt like in every room I went in, something evil was watching me, or that all the things I was doing wasn't working. And I spent a year making a film to honor a friend of mine who passed away and try to grieve him. And because it felt like all the things he did in this world and wanted to accomplish was meaningless. And I felt like, I think it disturbed me so much, because why would I be any different? I wasn't even doing the things that he wanted to do in life. And I think things even got worse because I was starting to get surrounded by people who had this new age mindset. And frankly, I spent the last 15 years trying to reinvent religion or spirituality for myself. I grew up Christian and then started straying and finding other books that spoke to my soul. Starting with Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I read that book over hundreds of times, but there's a problem with it where it just feels like nihilism. It feels like you're not actually providing any value to the world. You're just being stoic and emotionless to whatever outcomes happen in the world, which I feel like it's an incomplete philosophy. Then for me, it was the Tao Te Ching. I read that book hundreds of times, and that led me down this path of not knowing, accepting that you will never know. And it worked for a little bit. And then the book, The Power of Now, came into my life by Eckhart Tolle. And that came into my life right after my friend died. And the thing about a lot of these books is they soothed my soul. And I remember telling a friend about this, and he's just like, why don't you, why don't you, if you want a book that soothes your soul, why don't you read the Bible? And I didn't get that at the time, because I spent 15 years away from Christianity. I mean, all this stuff that I experienced, growing up, I wasn't very inspired by it, but it did get to a point where, when I made a film, I started writing a script about my friend who passed away. I went to his wake with that script, and I felt like I was delivering it to the family to get their blessing, and I felt like, okay, I don't know anyone here. This feels like a meet and greet. I should leave at some point, right? And I heard a voice as clear as day tell me, don't leave. There's someone here you need to meet. And first person I ran into was somebody who I didn't even think I'd want to talk to for more than 5 minutes. They've become one of my best friends since. But at that time, they had no idea that I just spent all this time writing a script about my friend. He tells me about a lucid dream he had after my friend passed away, which was a complete match of the script I just spent months writing. His lucid dream matched my script, except in the dream he asks our friend, how's heaven? To which our friend responded, I got the flames, brother. I can never trust God. Now, this really messed with me because it was one of the clearest examples of divine intervention, and something was going on here that I could not explain. Because I knew somebody needed that script, but everyone I thought needed it didn't. And I knew that I was doing something very heavy spiritually, and I felt like I was following some guiding voice. And I'm going to get to this in a few minutes. I went home and decided then and there, I don't know. I don't know what that dream meant, but I'm going to start trusting God. Now, I didn't know what that meant, but I just said, God, all right, I'm going to start trusting you. Whatever that means, even if it feels silly, I'm going to start trusting you. And when I did that, even if I didn't know what that meant, just trying, I'm like, I'm going to try this on. I have to. Because that was ridiculous, what just happened there. And right then, I saw the most beautiful sunlight over the water of the bridge I was driving over that I've ever seen in my life. And then I felt the feeling of the greatest warmth I'd ever felt in life up to that point. And love. And I was like, all right, I am on the right path. Now that feeling would start to go away, and I'd have to figure out what it is that I had to finally change in order to keep it. And lately, what I've been doing has allowed me to go even deeper into that feeling of love. That love and that light has come more into my life than ever before. And I'll get to why and what I've been doing to keep that and to keep going into that. But I decided I was going to rewrite the script. I ended up feeling this nudge to cast this person who I met at my friend's wake in the film, even though he's never acted before. And I'd end up making a film that felt like a mission trip. It felt like the powers of good and evil were at war. And I described everything that went on to a friend of mine. And he said, "It sounds like you're going through spiritual warfare." And I didn't know what that meant. And I'll delineate what that means, but it sounds like you're going through spiritual warfare right now, and you're at battle with, there's two different sides in this. And I'll get to what that is. But we were at this mansion where I initially met my friend. That was the only location that we could keep for the film for some reason, which was spooky and led to a lot of things happening that I could not plan. Like my friend was able to be part of the film posthumously. Footage from that location managed to match perfectly, and that was never the plan. We showed up, the sky is full of vultures, dozens of vultures. It snowed on the most magical scene, spontaneously snowed right at the end of the week. We had a lot of like paranormal things happening and things that you could feel a presence on this set. Something was going on. I saw a shooting star for the first time in my life 2 days before the shoot, looking up at the sky, because that's what the character does in the film when he's looking for a sign that things are going to go well. And there's just so many moments from this week that haunt me. And there was a moment where the week changed from a shoot to this spiritual mission trip experience where a buddy of mine, the one I met at the wake, just, he was sitting around talking with some strangers, and I was like, something's going on here. I couldn't place it. It was kind of like going into the wake and then hearing a voice. Something told me something was about to happen, and I had to let it unfold. And he opens up about losing 5 friends, and the PTSD of that, and how, one of them he had to clean up and stepped in, and I watched him grow and change as a person. This affected everyone there, and then at that moment, it became clear to me like what this all was about. It was, this film wasn't just for me to grieve; it was for him too. He had to go through some stuff, and I think it would have never all happened if I didn't decide to start trusting God. And it wouldn't have happened if I didn't start to follow God's voice and try to identify what that is and do what I think he wants me to do in life. And this same voice led me to go back to church at one point. Everyone was recommending me to go back to church. And I never said anything to anyone that I needed a church or anything, but I honestly, deep down, after that shoot, and also driving home, after I realized what we had accomplished, I'm like, this is incredible. Like what, we got everything done. And all the crazy experiences we had, God, I couldn't have done this without you. And then I'm sitting at the stoplight with this person who I met at my friend's wake, sitting behind me in his truck. And it hit me like what we accomplished. And I looked down at the odometer, it said 7777. And it was the most bizarre experience of my life, the whole thing. And I remember after that shoot feeling like there was something evil watching me. Something was out to get me. And months later, I'd find out what that was. I wasn't wrong. Something was out to get me. Something was out to kind of sabotage my life. And my question to you is, are the things in your life, you mentioned just another way to control the masses, but in a new age disguise. You mentioned control, manifestation, energy, vibration, all this. I want to ask you this. Are these pathways, these things that you've learned, and I include myself in this, are they giving you control? And in that control comes the knowledge of good and evil. And that knowledge of good and evil takes you out of the Garden of Eden. That's because the enemy's talking to you. And I'm somebody who spent 15 years trying to reinvent religion or spirituality, my own interpretation of the universe. And things just got so bad that I decided, I'm going to surrender to what I grew up with, what I knew, which was my faith. Now, what a lot of churches get wrong that I didn't experience growing up is that you got to think about it as relationship to Christ, this figure who you have to believe and choose to believe or try on the belief that he died for your sins. God sent him to purchase your sins, much like if you get in an accident, somebody doesn't have insurance. We can never purchase forgiveness for who we are, things that we've done, our brokenness. But God sent his son to pay for that. And it's actually genius. And I say this in the sense of, if there is truth to all these vibrations and vibrations sound kind of like superstring theory to me. I spend a lot of time trying to understand superstring theory or physics, understanding of physics to basically explain how the universe worked and figure out if there was a God or not. And what it led me down was, superstring theory, where we have every particle has 11 dimensions, 1 time and 10 are space, and each of these strings vibrated at a different frequency, and they have access to the 11 dimensions, and they all have interconnected relationships. And if there's a string in your finger connected to a string in a star going supernova billions of light years away, and the light of that dying star would never reach us if we were never here to observe it. That's just the interconnectedness of the universe. And that sounds like how the whole vibrations, manifestation stuff works. But I think, if all this is true, the person who created it, the being that is in control of this, they would have wrote the Bible. If you try to do research on Christ, whether he was a real person or not, you will find a lot of evidence. Atheists try to figure out whether he existed or not, and they all come around to believing in him by doing the research. Why is it that every religion, acknowledges Christ, but it's like he's the way, but he's a way to, enlightenment, but we're also a way. Maybe he's just the way. He's the only way. Because he's the only thing that all these different religions agree upon, that he existed and was the way. And it strikes me as, why didn't I just come around to this before? It was right in front of me. I overthink things. I'm somebody who's an overthinker, especially my generation. We like to overthink everything, especially religion or spirituality. And I've come to a place of just look at it simply. Look at the Bible as though it is written and it means what it says. I always loved people who had really complicated interpretations of it, like Jordan Peterson. But now that I'm getting into my faith again, I've found that he doesn't know how to make the final step. And that's just accept what's written and dive into it. Dive into the sea, the vast and endless sea of the gospel. It is something you swim in. It's not something that you're going to get immediately. And it takes a long time to come to understanding of it. And it takes a relationship with Christ. You got to imagine that, Christ is working in your life. It's not the universe. The universe doesn't give a shit. It's God. It's Christ. And you look at, if you look at it that way, that's where you're going to start to find warmth in your life. And that's what I've experienced, is you work on it not as a relationship with the universe or anything. It's Christ working in your life. And the thing is about Christ is he loves you even if you're broken. He doesn't care. He forgave you even if you're broken. And if you can come to accept him in your life as your Lord and Savior, as cliche as that might sound, the point of that is you then can accept others. You then accept your responsibility of being a follower of him and a disciple, to work on serving him, serving others, and helping create other disciples so that they can have God's work flow through them. I used to think that good works were things that we had to do. I now think, and I've experienced this, where good works or good things, they're God working through us and his grace working through us. I've experienced that. It's a feeling of love and warmth and heat. And I can tell you, treating my faith, coming back into it, and treating it like I train martial arts. I'm not going to get it the first class or the first sermon. And frankly, you got to find a good church. You're not going to find a good, you're not going to do well if you have a bad jiu-jitsu gym. All right. But you got to find a good church. And frankly, to me, a good church is one where you're able to ask questions and they're not going to ridicule you. They're going to answer you honestly and try to help you. And I didn't ever feel like anyone was trying to convince me when I went to my church. The one I found, I got really lucky. And I think God orchestrated it so I'd find it. They're not there to convince you. Like I heard a good salesman is not there to convince. He's there to answer questions. And frankly, am I being convinced? I don't know. I'm just trying to address the question and do it the best way I can and what worked for me. And right now where I'm at in life is like, I'm getting serious about my faith and my relationship with Christ, believing in him as a real person. And I can tell you, I feel like I've been in conversation, and sometimes, you can pray to him and listen for an answer, and you'll hear something, and you can try the answer on, Christ, am I supposed to do this? What am I supposed to do here? Listen for the answer. You might need silence. You might need to meditate. And you'll hear something and you repeat it back. You want me to do this? You say it back to him. And then that's a way of like, it's actually a good method for me to not overthink, is to try this on and see what he wants. And first off, I apologize. I realize, you probably weren't expecting me to go down this road of trying to bring Christ into your life through this answer. But if I'm honest, it just feels like the solution that helped me with what I was going through, because the deeper I've gone in my relationship with Christ and my faith and more work I put into, God has brought opportunities into my life of getting into meetings with people, getting to know people and become friends with certain people I probably would have never became friends with, that are amazing people. They brought so much love and joy into my life and brought so much people. You mentioned that, you're finding yourself, alone. I can't find it. I'm losing it in the message. I'm trying to find it. You're distancing more and more from people. I think the reason why Christianity or your relationship with Christ or the Bible, it works better than Stoicism or a lot of these New Age stuff, is it works in relationship with other people. And this is me coming from the stance of, I tried to reinvent religion or spirituality and overthink it. The point is, it does bring you in relationship with people. And what's crazy for me is I recently cut out all books that were not the Bible, and now I strictly use the Bible as a tool. I mean, I read new books that I haven't read before all the time, but the ones that I've cut out were the ones that I were my crutch. The Power of Now was a book that I re-listened to it so many times to get myself in the mindset that I felt I needed to be in to be successful at whatever I wanted to do, and it was a huge leap of faith for me to cut that out and to just filter out anything that didn't prioritize trusting God. And it's been so helpful. And I've noticed it's made me more outgoing. It's made me more social and more warm with people. Like, sometimes I go into settings where I'm like, this is not the Tom that I was a year ago. It just, where does this come from? And that's where I realize it comes from my relationship with Christ. God works good things through me, and it's not from me. And that's the humility that I've been able to gain from, if I can call myself humble. I don't want to, that's counterproductive. Any humility I have comes from this belief of, all right, God's in control. I trust him. And it's the more you get into a place where you are no longer looking to control the world or the universe through the knowledge of good and evil, which is the enemy, Satan, trying to interfere. And I can give an example. The less the less you do that, and the more you live in the unknowingness in relationship to Christ, your Savior, the less you try to seek that control, the less likely you're going to be taken out of the Garden of Eden. And that's what it sounds like. And I'll give an example of what this looks like for me. After my film, I was talking to somebody on the project that led me to talking to a psychic, or they're somebody related to them that's a psychic. And I was in a relationship at the time that was beautiful. I thought I would marry this person. And I was doing great, but I felt this evil presence in my life, and I started going to church because of that. I decided to, after I got rebaptized, make the dumb decision of going to talk to this person who apparently they were a miracle healer in the name of God. And it was this sense of, it was the sense of that I was told things that distorted the truth of the Bible. And I've come to respect that now. Like, that there's a reason they say that it's the Bible's truth. You got to read it and let it speak to you, and read only that, because God, in all of his ability and power, he would make sure that the Bible ends up the way it's intended. There's no books missing from the Bible. I was convinced by these people that that's what happened. They told me that, the Bible cuts out books that were burned that talked about how Jesus taught his disciples how to do these things. No. All right. Jesus didn't teach his disciples how to do miracles. That's something Satan would tell you. Here's some way to control the universe or the world, which is what manifestation is, which is what all this New Age stuff is. It's to control your spiritual world with the knowledge of good and evil. And with that, you get taken out of the Garden of Eden. And I sought this advice, and I was told things that my partner were going through that made me feel like I had to do something to help them. And it led to me making decisions and watching them react to it a certain way that made me think, oh my gosh, they're not doing anything, not taking this problem seriously. And it made me fall out of love and not realize that I was no longer resenting the problem. I was resenting them for not solving it. And that's without getting into too much detail, but like I can pinpoint with GPS accuracy the advice that I was given and what they did when they said it. And it was always closing their eyes and putting their fingers to their temple. Every time the advice was given that led to those problems came from that. And I'm ashamed that at that moment I turned my back on my relationship with God and with Christ, but I didn't know it at the time. And I have a file on my computer called A Sign from Jesus. I was driving home the day that this all started. You know, ironically, I was seeing Wicked with my girlfriend. And I drove home and my water bottle vibrated like in the cup holder like an animal. I didn't know it was my water bottle at first. I was like, that sounds really evil, like strange. What is that? Oh, it's the water bottle. And then I saw at the stoplight, there was a car with like, I don't know, this Jesus sticker. And something about it, I was like, I need to take a picture of this. I don't know why. So I was getting my phone out and then the light turned green and they weren't going. And I'm like, come on, dude, I'm go. I'm like, honk. Oh wait, I need to take a picture. You come back. And I couldn't track them down. I lost them in Valley Forge. They were driving off into the darkness and I could never see them. Their light, Jesus's light left me. And I interpreted it as something else at the time. But really what it was saying was I lost Christ. I stopped following him. And I can pinpoint with GPS accuracy again, every time in my life, I've gone through moments where my life fell apart. Things went horrible. I felt empty inside. All these things were going wrong. Nothing was going right. I felt miserable. I can pinpoint it. It was when I was turned away. I wasn't going towards Christ. And if you want to take anything from this, except for the more than just the 3 books I'm going to recommend in a second, just go into this try telling yourself, all right, God or Christ, I'm going to start trusting you. I want to live in relationship with you in the unknown and slowly get rid of like trying these books that are new age. They're trying to control things, because the more you try to control things and overthink the universe, the worse it's going to get. I mean, there's a reason why 2,000 years of people led to the Bible and this thing called faith. And not only do you have to try to, not only is that the first step of saying, I'm even if I feel silly, I want to trust you. Figure out what that means. Start reading. There's 2 books to start reading. Romans and John. I've heard it explained that Romans is a kick in the tush and John is a warm hug, whichever one you want to read first. But then read the New Testament and the Gospels and go through it if you want. But I also recommend eventually it's not enough to just read the Bible and pray. I do think by going to a church, for me, I've been able to surround myself with people who guide me through my journey and my spiritual journey. And now you got to find a good one, and it might take you sitting in the back pew, going to different ones so you can back out if you're not feeling it. But finding one where you're not going to be like, you're able to ask questions, and if you're wrong, they're not going to like treat you terribly. Like they're going to accept you, because guess what? We're all broken people. But if Christ accepts us, he accepts everyone. He hung out with sinners. I'm a sinner. I made so many mistakes in my life. And there's something about this that it's Nothing else even comes close to it. No book I've ever read other than this stuff works. And I say this as stuff. It's, you know, it's kind of like, no, this just, it is the thing. It is the truth. And you will, I want you to try it and see it for yourself. See God work magic in your life and see that, you know, like a good jiu-jitsu gym or a good martial arts gym, you go to a church to start talking with people. And then eventually, before you know, if they have groups, if they're a good church, they'll have group meetings, which is like smaller groups, so you get to know people, or opportunities to serve others through that church. That's the beauty. Is like lately, I've been so fulfilled because I have so many opportunities to serve people, and I never thought I'd get this involved in my church, even though I grew up going to church, but I was never this involved before. It recharges me. And it sounds like your battery's drained right now. And what recharged my battery more than even making a film to honor my friend who passed away was just finding a church, a good church. And sometimes God is going to do that for you. And really taking your faith seriously and seeing where that leads. And I wonder if you were to do that, would that bring some vitality and energy back to your art and things that matter to you? Because, you know, one of the things I learned years ago that actually started my journey back to believing in God and praying, but I wasn't doing it right. It's praying before writing sessions that really started making me realize, okay, I shouldn't be questioning this. There's something going on here. There's something more to this. And I don't think you can get away with talking to God and having a good relationship with God if you don't believe the book he wrote. If you want to believe in God, wouldn't you think that he'd make his book with all of his ability and power to direct you through life towards good things? He'd want the book to turn out the way he wanted so nobody was deceived. And he'd want you to live in relationship with him. He wants a romance with you, a sacred romance. You ever notice the beauties in life when the way that the sun hits the flowers, or the way that you feel when you're pursuing your art and doing something magical that you love, or you're entering a relationship, or you fall in love with someone, or all these aspects of life that are so beautiful and great. They come from this sacred romance. And that's actually a book title by John Eldredge. I'd recommend John Eldredge books. I think he wrote a book, Captivating, with his wife. I think it's Stacey Eldredge. I could be wrong. I'm not looking at it right now. Apologies if I got that wrong. But Captivating is a good book if you're looking to, if you're looking for a book that explains that, you know, faith and Christianity isn't just about, it's not just about it's not just about reading the Bible and praying. There's more to it. There's more dimensions. You know, if you check that out, John Eldredge books have changed my life, and it's really, honestly, spooky. It felt like everything I've been trying to write about in my films, understand about being a man, all the experiences I've had over the last 15 years, they were all sitting on my bookshelf because my youth group pastor, who called me Doubting Thomas years ago, gave it to me and gifted it to me and signed it, and I never read it. And I finally read it because I was going through something and I really needed it. And God put it in my life, and it led to me reading 5 books by the same author in 2 weeks. But yeah, the books I'd recommend is Romans, John, and Captivating by John Eldredge and his wife. I think it's Stacey Eldredge. I can't remember. But I would try considering, you know, a faith journey with Christ, a relationship with Christ, because what you will probably experience very soon is if you do look to have a loving relationship with Christ and figure out what that is, and trust him in the unknowns of that relationship and pray to him, and then stop relying on books that control your world through the knowledge of good and evil, like manifestation culture, like New Age stuff. See where that gets you. You might find that the tank, like me, my tank got filled up like out of nowhere, and it all kind of reminds me of that story where God or Christ fed thousands of people with just a few fish and a few loaves of bread. I think the message of that story was, if you have God, he's going to fulfill you and fill you up and give you everything. He's going to give you all the energy and all the goodness that can come into this world through you. So I hope that you're okay with me making this video that basically poses the solution of try a relationship with Christ. See what that does. And this comes from someone who avoided him for 15 years, tried to reinvent religion because I thought I was a genius, but really I was just fucking lazy. I realized that I wasn't actually trying. And if I'm not trying for God and his son, why the fuck would he try for me? And I know Christians don't generally curse. Sorry about that. But that's why God, when I turn my back on him, my life sucks, because he can't work through me. And he wants that romance. He's a jealous God. And he'll give you everything if you devote yourself to him. And I hope this video is helpful. I would try finding that church, a good church, if that feels like something you're ready for. And at this point, I think I've covered everything I can think to cover. But you know, I hope this video was useful for you, Nabila from Sweden, and greetings from Thomas from America. Hope this was helpful. And if anyone watching this finds this helpful as well, I appreciate you watching. Leave a comment below if you're going through something, you need some advice that may or may not be something I can provide. Because I mainly make videos about my filmmaking and my faith. And I like to find the parallels between that. But I hope this was helpful. I appreciate you watching. I'm losing my voice. Have a good one. Later. Bye.